Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to another Tuesday Talk. It's so nice to see you, and it's so nice to be seen. Uh, Heather was here just a couple minutes ago. People may drop in and out from the Freedom Entrepreneurs United community, and they may not. Heather was having some internet issues, so we decided that it'd be best if she catch the replay. Yay! So today, I really want to talk about being authentically you, and this talk is really on my mind. So it all started with a friend of mine. I was on a podcast, and he was talking about when was a football player, and he talked about how he broke his leg and he had an injury and he no longer be a football player, and how much of a identity crisis that sent him through. And it reminded me of someone that was in rehab with me when I had my brain surgery. He was a soccer player who uh, went out. He got a full ride scholarship for U of M. He went out and decided to drink and party and got into a car accident. I'm not sure if he was driving or if someone else was driving. It really doesn't matter. Um, in reality, what happened was he lost use of his legs, so he was no longer a soccer player. And so, what does that look like? And unfortunately, he could not um, redefine who he was at that time, and decided that at 18 he needed to commit suicide. And so all week I've been kind of on this who are you and who are you really, and talking about that both in my daily Jedi's and on my Facebook lives. But then this weekend has been just one of these like really crazy weekends and having really interesting conversations, because this is the conversation that's in community, right? So one of my friends uh, decided to that he wanted to commit suicide. Luckily, he didn't succeed, but he attempted. Another one of my friends told me that they were um, not valid unless they were being used sexually. And then I had another friend talk to me about being raped. And what really came up for me is how knowing who you are authentically and owning your story and owning who you are authentically could really change the conversation that we're having with ourselves and with others. So the first thing I want to do is let you know, and kind of prove to you you are not your thoughts. So I want you to close your eyes for a moment. Take a nice deep breath with me. And you might have some thoughts going on. Probably have some thoughts going on, right? Why are you here? Why are we doing this? You look crazy. Why am I listening to this guy? But notice that you're the one observing that thought. The separation. Now we can go into our thoughts and we can follow those thoughts, but at the end of the day, there is a separation between you and that thought. And the more you meditate, the more you find that break, right? Take those moments of silence and let the thoughts go by. So you're not your thoughts, right? I'm going to assert that you're also not what you do. You change jobs all the time. You were someone before you had a job. You will be someone after you have this job. You were someone before you picked up the coffee cup, and you are someone after you pick up that coffee cup, after you put it down. I'm not my actions. Doesn't matter what that action is. You made love with that person. You didn't make love with that person. Before and after, you were still a person. So who are we? I'm going to say that we are actually two things, right? And they're both equally true. Or I should say, neither one is true. And I want you to try them both on. So the first thing is, what if we are God played hide and seek, as Alan Watts says? We are one with the collective's consciousness, and we are a part of the universe, like a cell in a body. What does that look like for you? You're one with the trees and the earth, the air around you. You're one with the dog that's barking and the storm that went through last night. Can you feel yourself expand to be outside this meat suit? Next, I want to assert that we are the conversations that are had about us, both internal and external. So we talk about all the time that who we are, and where are we? Who are we? Where am I located? Internally, we talk about ourselves in probably some of the most beautiful and harshest terms anyone. You would never say to another human being some of the things you say to yourself. Yeah. There are also conversations that others have about you, because that's where we live. We are not solitary uh, species. We live through our inverse. And Alan Watts puts it this way: you can't tell black without white. You can't tell light without dark. You can't tell the, you can't describe you without the surroundings. Now, if you turn off your camera and you try to describe who you are without a mirror, and anything that you've ever seen in a mirror or a camera, what would that be like? Before all those things, you were still someone, and we were still people, and we are still part of the whole, and we were the conversations what other people said. Today, Cleopatra, who was one of the most beautiful women in the world, supposedly, would not be considered beautiful. She very rarely actually ever saw herself. Not like we have the polished glass that we have now, the mirrors, the things that we've always had, the cameras. For goodness sakes, we take enough selfies of ourselves. She didn't have that. She had what other people said. And people couldn't see themselves. You can't see your nose, although you look at it every day, all day long. You have to think about it. You can't see your eyes and how beautiful they are. But you can hear the conversations around it. So you are the conversations that are had about you. As Eminem put it, I am whatever you say I am. Because if I won't, why would you say I am? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you say or what is true. It's in that conversation that you will actually live. good, bad, ugly, all of it. So one of the things that living an authentic life talks about and really needs to talk about is how to really control that narrative, both internally and externally, right? Because if you are that conversation and you are the author of that conversation, one of the things that I think is super important, one of the principles I live by is just own it. The more you can own, the more you can just be who you authentically are and the things that you have done and all of it, the less they have on you. The less the conversation could be anything other than what you want it to be. Now, there was a time when I was a little more open with the conversation. A lot of it was sexualized. A lot of that conversation was um, maybe not the most um, uplifting. And I control that narrative too. I own it all. I own everything I've ever done sexually in my life. I own it. And the stories that you want to tell about it, because trust me, most of them are probably true. And so- and let me and I'll add a couple more details, right? And I just own that. And the more I can own that, the more I can own my mistakes, the more I can own where I am, the more I could just be in that space of everything, the better it is. The less the conversation can be anything other than what I want it to be. Yeah, but yeah, so yeah, so that's something to happen. Uh-huh. So there's some conversations that I don't talk about often, and there's conversations that I think that one of the things that we do is we try to fill this hole because we want to either look good or we want to belong, and so and not always around the right people and the better people. And there's actually a really funny story. I worked with Primerica, and I was working with this person, and he literally took me to a crack dealer's house to talk about financial services. Okay, and again, there's nothing wrong here. But the day before, we had a conversation about what our dreams were. And at the time, one of my dreams was to open up this really cool community that I've been playing with lately, slightly different, right? This artist community that, um, yeah. And so we had just had this conversation about what that looks like and what that is the night before. And so, but in this conversation, they wouldn't understand that. So in this conversation, what came out of my mouth is that I wanted a porn studio and a grow room. Now, neither one of those are bad, right? And don't get me wrong, a porn studio would be fun. You don't want to see me actually perform in porn studios, but trust me, you want my brain playing those out. You would like it. But what was the night before this artist community became this in this situation because that's what actually would make me relatable that situation. Now, should I be in that room? Probably not. Is there things that I could have done differently? Probably. So sometimes it's about the room that you're in. Are you in the room where the conversation is the artist community or the porn studio? Again, neither one is wrong. I talk about this all the time that I have friends that I go to, and the conversation is a little more on the darker side, right? A lot of it's drama, a lot of it's sex, and again, nothing wrong here. And then I have a group that I hang out with that it's about spirituality and uplifting and how to heal the wounds that are within you. And again, there's nothing, neither one of those conversations, I don't discount that conversation. But when you are unbalanced and you're in that conversation and the conversations that you're having, they have two different versions of me. In one circle, it may be the porn studio, and that's who I am to them. And in the other community, it might be the artist community because that's who I am to that group. And who am I really? It doesn't really matter. I am whoever I say I am and whoever you say I am. So looking at how to actually change that conversation a little bit, right? So there's some ways to change that conversation. And the first one is the game of black and white. Okay. First thing I want to talk about is that the game of black and white says that you can't have one without the other, the good without the bad, and neither one can be labeled bad or wrong or good and happy. They just are. And they may be inverse of each other. Blue without red. You wouldn't tell the color blue without red, or black without white, or light without dark, or cold without hot, rain without sunshine. Nothing wrong here. It just is. That's so when you start controlling the narrative on you, are you judging that space, right? Are you judging the fact that you said that you wanted to have a porn studio? Or the making it wrong that you wanted a porn studio, or right that you want to have an artist community? Just are. So the first thing is to stop judging yourself. The second part is integrity. You are perfect, whole, and complete just as you are. There are things that might be working for you, and there may be things that aren't working for you, and those are probably in conversation, in the conversations that you're having, because the conversations that you're having, both internally and externally, cause your actions. The actions work or don't work. Your action or inaction, because inaction is an action. So looking at integrity as just being whole and complete, nothing bad or wrong, that works or it doesn't. And as you start playing with that and being in integrity and keeping the word with yourself, your word, who you are, is congruent with who you are being. You say and what you do are congruent. That's integrity. So being authentic there and having that kind of authenticity and just owning authentically. And you don't have to tell everybody everything. So one of the things that I talked about is um, fuck them, say it anyways. Doesn't matter what they think. But it has to have a purpose. So I talked to you about the porn studio. I don't think I've ever said that out loud in any kind of training I've ever done in my life. But it wasn't to make me look bad or look good or any of that, right? It's because it had a purpose, because there's two different conversations about me. it'd be two completely different conversations, and you would have a different conversation. And in this moment, you probably have a different conversation about me that you may have had even a half hour ago. I get to control that conversation. No one may ever see this video again. I could bury this video, and I'm talking to you directly, and I could bury it today. No one would ever see this. No one would ever have this conversation about me. If I was ashamed of it, or if I didn't think it would help people. Being authentic means that sometimes you have to be there. And you have to say the things that may be uncomfortable for you, it may be uncomfortable for others, but being authentic to yourself. So I'm not trying to hurt you. Now, I didn't use any names in the stories I started this with on purpose. They this video. So how do we start changing the conversation about ourselves? We start actually honoring our word. We start putting things back in integrity. We start doing the things that we know to do, doing the things that we said we'd do, doing them in a timely fashion, and what's expected we do. And that gets tricky. Or tell them no. Send the boundary that, their expectation is something that you are not comfortable with. Tell them no. Set that boundary. No, I couldn't be at every one of my mother's doctor's appointments anymore. No, I'm not putting myself in situations where I'm in rooms with drug dealers trying to have conversations about financial services. No, I'm not in rooms where I'm talking about financial services. That didn't work for me either. So changing although I did talk a little bit in a sexual tone, and that may be construed sexually, but finding non-sexual community, finding areas where it's not about hooking up, it's not about what that looks like. Finding a community that really is uplifting and pulls for you in your highest and your best, and the highest and best conversation around you. So, folks, if you want to learn more about living in authenticity and being, truly who you are, I invite you to give me a call. Um, you can get that over at True Awesome Life/Clarity and set up a call. I'm not going to sell you anything on that call. We're just going to talk about what it looks for you to live in your true awesome life. I love each and every one of you today. Let me know if there's anything I can do, anything I can clarify for you in this conversation. And I will see you all soon.